Hey, SpongeBob, do you know what time it is?
Oh, sure, it's half past invisible.
Hello and happy Halloween, everyone, and welcome to yet again another installment in the Universal Monster Movie Reviews. This is number 4 in the series. If you want to go back and watch the others, there should be a playlist link in the description and in the card above. Now, I expect all of you have read the title, so in today's episode, we're talking about The Invisible Man.
We're ghosts.
Okay, now I'll try my best not to constantly reference that SpongeBob episode, so let's get into this movie. Now, as we've discussed in previous videos, we are now 4 movies in, and Universal's house style continues to get stronger and stronger. Different aspects are improving, and existing techniques continue to strengthen. One big example of this is in the opening credits. Like, who knew that H.G. Wells wrote this?
No shit.
Okay, well maybe most of you did, but I didn't know that. Anyway, these credits are super detailed and formal, which compared to Dracula or even The Mummy are like super different from one another. And look, it's even sponsored by the NRA. That's cool.
Yikes.
After the credits, we see a man walking through a heavy snowstorm toward the town of Ipping and into a little place called the Lion's Head Inn. It's a lively place full of drunkards, tweakers, and a surprising amount of jokes.
How did they get him out? Brought the fire engine round, put the hose pipe in, pumped it backwards, and sucked him out.
Like, I don't remember this at all from the previous movies, but I do appreciate seeing it here. Perhaps the funniest part in this scene for me wasn't the jokes, but what all of them do when this mysterious man walks in.
What the hell is that?
All of them stop, dead silent, and turn toward him like he farted in church. At this point, he beelines to the bar and asks for a room. The barman then calls for Jenny, who from now on I'll be calling her Migraine for reasons that will become obvious as the movie continues. Now, once he gets settled into his room, Migraine goes back to bring him something and finds out that something is off about the man. She doesn't say anything, but you can tell she saw something she wasn't supposed to and was kind of spooked by it. We then cut to a house where a father and daughter are talking about a man by the name of Griffin, who they haven't heard from for about a month. Then another man named Kemp enters the scene. They all begin thinking of ways in which to track him down, with the woman being the most concerned. Okay, so one quick pause before we continue. When I first saw this character, I have expected it to be the man himself, Edward von Sloan, but it unfortunately isn't. Yeah, I guess the first 3 Universal Monster movies were the only ones he did, and I can't seem to find out why. It's not entirely important, but it is a bit sad to think we won't get to see him again. Good night, sweet doctor. So anyway, back to the movie. This scene highlights one small issue I have, which is the lack of context and information we get about these characters in the beginning. I remember watching this part and trying to figure out what their names were and why they were talking about the guy in the first place, to the point where I'm writing this script just a few hours after watching it, and I don't even remember the father or the daughter's names. That's how little they matter to the story. So I'm just going to assign them names. You are Einstein, you are Rose, since you serve about as much purpose as Rose from the Titanic and Doctor Who.
Boom. Roasted.
And you are... I can't really think of a name for you yet. Maybe I'll think of one in a minute. So at one point, Kent and Rose... Not Kent, it's Kemp. I thought it was Kent when I was writing this, and it's not. It's Kemp. So at one point, Kemp and Rose go into another room, and Kemp tries to make a move with Rose, to which Rose starts sobbing and basically tells him to piss off. Oh, I got it now. Your name is Cuck. Now back to the Lion's Head Inn. After a few days, the barman and Migraine become angry at this mysterious man, as he's behind on his rent, doesn't leave his room, he's spending his time doing experiments and testing, and Migraine loses her goddamn mind when he snaps at her and slams the door in her face. Yeah, can you see why I call her Migraine now? And it's not like the man is any better, as we find out that he's a misogynist.
And
Yay!
a whole day's work ruined by a foolish ignorant woman.
Women.
So then the barman goes up to address the problem, and the man then beats him over the head with a book and shoves him down the stairs. Oh boy, if you thought Migraine was bad before...
You clam up!
Then some folks from the inn go and fetch the constable. This scene had me cracking up, mainly because the constable is the most passive man I've ever seen. Like, dude hears about an assault and battery and just goes, what a legend. One more howl from Migraine later. And the constable goes upstairs. And once confronted, the man still won't back down. He snaps, beginning to reveal, well, nothing.
Good grief, he's naked!
Actually, this scene is pretty freaking cool. The effect looks really decent, and the bandages slowly revealing nothing behind him was a nice touch. What's even cooler is when you learn about how the effect was achieved. That's right, welcome back to Film Studies with Cole. This will affect your college application, so pay close attention.
Write that down, write that down!
So, this film used a relatively new technique at the time called the dual, or in this case, multiple exposure technique.
It's relatively easy to film an invisible man when he has no clothes on. But when he has some clothes on, but only some, this presents a significant challenge.
They would start by filming the actor, who would have black velvet on underneath his clothes and bandages, and would be standing in front of a black backdrop. Then, they would film the setting as normal and combine the two shots together. Now there's a shot later in this film where the invisible man is standing in front of a mirror, and this was the hardest shot to do as it required 4 separate pieces of film, as they had to film him in front of the mirror and his reflection separately. Although the effect isn't perfect, you can kind of see some artifacting around specific sections when you really look closely at it. It holds up quite well for the most part, and it's really impressive to learn just how they pulled it off. Phew, okay, so back to the story. Wait, where were we? Oh yeah, so the constable is talking to this group of people and says this amazing line.
He's invisible. That's what's the matter with him.
And then attempts to go back up and arrest him, and perhaps the goofiest scene in the whole movie happens, where the invisible man begins chasing the constable and the group around this table and chair like an episode of Looney Tunes. It's so goddamn funny. Eventually, the invisible, okay, I'm calling him I.M. now. I.M. tells them about the chemicals that made him invisible and what one could do if made invisible, and most of them are normal and actually rational.
Quit. He can rob, rape, and kill.
Whoa, hey.
So after some trickery by I.M., he assaults the constable, and what really offended me was on the way out, he knocked over this beautiful antique clock and isn't that... Oh, Jesus Christ, migraine, shut up. After I.M. tears through the town, chucking a bike at some people and being a hoodlum, the constable calls the police department and attempts to explain what's happening. Meanwhile, Cuck and Einstein, who are now digging through Griffin's lab searching for clues like this is a Scooby-Doo episode, they both discuss what Griffin was doing before he left, and Einstein somehow figures out that one of the chemicals that Griffin was using was called monocaine.
List of chemicals, and the last on the list is monocaine,
which can draw color from anything it touches, but can also destroy cloth and make any living thing go mentally insane. That's fun.
and it turned the dog dead white. Yes, and it also sent it raving mad.
After that, Cuck goes home and I.M. shows up and confronts him. Just before this, though, get this, instead of the police believing them that there's an invisible man, they come to the conclusion that there is an airborne virus or illness that has given everyone in the town hallucinations.
Story told this afternoon by the people of the village of Iping. It appears that a mysterious disease has broken out, infecting a large number of the inhabitants. It takes the form of a delusion that an invisible man is living among them.
Now, this is pretty stupid, right? On the other hand, though, I could see a police department declaring this instead of trying to understand or even explain to the world that someone has actually discovered the key to complete invisibility. Still pretty stupid, though. Anyway, I.M. wants him to help in his quest for mayhem? Tomfoolery? Shenanigans? He talks a little bit about how the drug lit up his brain and that he felt the overwhelming urge to rule over everyone, but beyond that, I'm honestly not sure now what his endgame is. I guess monocaine's one hell of a drug. I do love this scene where I.M. asks for a cigarette and begins smoking it. Again, they use the same dual exposure effect. It looks pretty damn good for a movie that's almost a century old. So Cuck is basically at this point held hostage by I.M., who's currently in his radical take-over-the-world era. The next day, I.M. wants to complete his first GTA 5 mission by going back to the inn and grabbing his experiment notebooks. He asks Cuck to drive him and to bring a warm blanket. And it was at this point where I realized the funniest detail of this entire movie. Every time I.M. is invisible, he is buck-ass naked. Sorry, I can't not laugh when I think about it. It's so goddamn funny. Dude is just out here like going commando through all of his side quests. It's so stupid. Okay, so once Cuck and I.M. arrive at the inn, there's a mass police interrogation happening where the officers are basically gaslighting all of them into believing that they're imagining all of it. And at that moment, I.M. yeets the inkwell at the officer.
Fuck your life! Bing bong!
Everyone runs out screaming, and for good measure murders the officer. And once Einstein goes to the police, we see the newest headlines, which reads, Man, gotta love the evolution of the English language. Anyways, you return to Cuck and I.M., where I.M. is explaining that any food or liquid inside his system is still visible. Now, this is the one part that's a bit tricky to actually have make sense. What about the liquid that we're 70% made of? Also, I'm pretty sure that we're always digesting and processing food and liquid, even if someone were to take food breaks. Now he wants to just turn around and become invisible again the next day having just eaten? Oh well, there's no time to worry about that because the officer is now dead and the APB has been put out in order to capture I.M.
There's a broadcast warning going out at 10:30. This is Sheriff Buford T. Justice putting out an old porn advisory.
The following scene is hilarious too. It shows different places and people that are hearing the advisory warning, including this dance party that goes from everyone dancing to all of them packing up and going home. At this point, Cuck is getting a little too nervous and ends up calling the police, but not before calling Einstein and Rose to come and help. Once they arrive, I.M. has awoken and is suspicious that Cuck is up to something. At that moment, Einstein and Rose...
Dr. Cranley and Flora.
Holy shit, wow, I wasn't that far off about Rose's real name. That's pretty funny. Shortly after, there's a scene where I.M. and Rose sit down to talk. I.M. quickly devolves into a raving lunatic again, and Rose is just like...
Say the cutest thing.
So at that moment, the police arrive. I.M. makes his escape, but not before telling Cuck that he'll kill him tomorrow night at 10 p.m. At this point, the rest of the movie is basically I.M. versus the police. The police attempt to trick I.M., but of course he sees through their plan to protect Cuck. Cuck ends up getting tied to his car and yeeted off of a cliff, and for good measure, I.M. derails a train and chucks a few people from a search party off a cliff. And because he's in his Joker arc still, he also starts giving out free money from the bank too, just to show how unhinged he really is. And it's only when this NPC officer says,
"He's got to sleep. They might catch him asleep,"
does the idea finally present itself. Father Time ends up discovering him snoring in his farmhouse, calls the police, and once they show up, they decide to recreate the ending of Frankenstein and set the barn on fire to draw out I.M. As he comes out, he gets immediately domed by an officer.
Yo! Holy shit, he dead!
And at the hospital, Rose runs to his side and has the life drains out of him, so does the invisibility, revealing at last what he looked like to the audience. Phew, and that's the movie. Man, I felt like it took a lot longer to run through than the previous ones. Now, I want to start off by saying that production-wise, this one is by far the furthest they've gone with the effects. Unfortunately, though, I don't think anyone is going to stick around for anything beyond that. The story's fine, albeit a bit too much fluff, and at times the plot felt needlessly complicated with too many unexplained characters. I also realized that we're back to more or less the same problem we had with Dracula when it comes to the soundtrack, where the movie is kind of just mostly quiet. Which, again, is sad because I personally love when a movie has music to strengthen its scenes. Instead, this movie just feels like people sitting and talking, people sitting and talking, people sitting and talking. It's very clear that this movie went all in on the special effects and let a lot of the other aspects fall by the wayside. So, to wrap up, get it? Like a bandage? This movie's pretty decent. Universal continues to improve their skills, and this movie takes a huge leap forward in practical effects, but unfortunately lacks in just about everything else. So if you like seeing cool effects like this, you'll probably enjoy this movie. And I'm giving it a 7.5 out of 10, just because of the effects. Good work, movie.
By a foolish ignorant woman.
Alright, and that's about all I have. Thanks for watching, friends. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, I have 3 more just like it, talking about Dracula, Frankenstein, and the Mummy. So be sure to check those out. Also consider subscribing so you don't miss when the stars align and I upload a new video. That's all for now. Happy Halloween. Ooh, spooky.
Oh, wow, Rick! Now this is more like it! All kinds of crazy characters. This place is great, you know? It's whimsical and fun.
I want a room and a fire.
With cheese. Oh, and can I get cheese on the Krabby Patty too?
Patrick. We ain't got none ready, not at this time of year. We don't usually have folks stopping, except in the summer.
Woohoo! Big summer blowout?
They've got all the sheep and the cows in for a fortnight now.
It will be a fortnight after my return that this letter shall arrive. Allow me to explain the curious charge in the ledger.
Mr. Dromby, you up there? Mr. Dromby, I'm coming in.
Guards! Guards! They're back!
What's all the hubbub, Puff?
Look, he's all eaten away. Huh? How do you like that, eh?
You're confused, I'm fucking confused, bro.
You think I'd escape like a common criminal? You need a lesson. I think I'll throttle you.
The constable is responsible. Now how does that sound?
It draws color from everything it touches. Years ago, they tried it for bleaching cloth. They gave it up because it destroyed the material.
Now be careful with that stuff, boys. It stains clothes.
Right, sir. Now we shall comb the country for 20 miles round.
Tell them to comb the desert, you hear me? Comb the desert!
It's the wrong trousers, Gromit, and they've gone wrong.
There you are. A present from the Invisible Man. Money, money!
All you care about is money. This town deserves a better class of criminal. It's not about money. It's about sending a message.